You are now tuning into the Some Salesforce Guy podcast. I am your host, Chris Hernandez, a Salesforce admin and developer whose focus is the administration and development of K-12 and university Salesforce-based systems. The episode you are about to listen to is about diving into choosing your edition of Salesforce. So if you're a fellow admin or you are an administrator at a school and you're trying to figure out how to choose your Salesforce edition, this episode is for you. Enjoy. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Some Salesforce Guy podcast. Last episode, we spent some time talking about myself and my career trajectory that guided me to this space to have understanding of Salesforce use in education. If you haven't already listened to that episode, make sure you go back and listen to it because we talk about a few of the pain points of why you should choose Salesforce for your educational institution. But if you don't, we're going to go over some of the pain points again today before we jump into how we choose our editions and what the best use cases for Salesforce editions are, or even what are Salesforce editions. So the point of all this is to demystify Salesforce for K-12 schools as well as universities. Now, what may come as a surprise to many people is that many schools are still playing catch up in terms of their technology systems. I mean, if you're not these really big name schools that bring in a lot of money, or if you're district schools, some DOE schools, you really see in some of these schools that they're playing catch up in terms of their internal technology tools that staff members are utilizing. And sometimes the reason for this is the fact that in the past, schools have chosen different technologies to supplement different problems that they were facing within the school. But now, in the age we live in, we need technologies or softwares that are all talking to each other and sharing information together. And so what we're seeing today is a lot of disjointed systems, siloed data. So if you don't know what siloed data is just basically data housed in different areas or different softwares, different platforms, and the platforms are not talking to each other. So staff members would have to log into one platform to see one thing about a student and then go to another platform. So a really great example of this would be at the school I currently work at before we implemented Salesforce. So all student data was housed in this software called the CRM called Rediker. And then outside of that, there were things like student IEP notes and student progress report notes, stuff like that. And those would all be housed either on our in-house server or in Google Drive or OneDrive. Maybe about a year ago, we started putting things into OneDrive. And so these are systems that were not speaking to each other. So if you needed something on student data, if you needed like a psychology report on a student, something like that, you would have to gain access to Rediker, which most staff members actually did not have access to. And then to go and write the reports, you'd have to go to a completely different system or find which system is housing the reports or housing the IEPs, who has the IEP. So this is an example of siloed data that exists in different systems where the systems are not connected together, which slows productivity for staff members. Then on top of that, I've always believed spreadsheets are very clunky. Now, when we talk about exporting data, which is something we'll get into in the future, but when we talk about exporting data from Salesforce, everything gets exported and even uploaded as a spreadsheet. But if you've ever used Microsoft Excel or any other kind of spreadsheet creator, you know that columns and rows can get out of hand in terms of data, the more data that you're collecting. And then the more spreadsheets you break that off into, it just gets a little crazy. Salesforce provides like a really neat interface where everything is basically Excel sheets, but it's placed into a really great UI for you to see all the information the way that you need to see it. And now just again, like why Salesforce for an educational institution? It's just a CRM, but Salesforce can help schools track things like student life cycles, admissions, communications between staff members and home, communications between staff members and students. For higher education in universities, it can do things like track student progress across their major or their minor. You can set up student communities for admissions or even for alumni so that people can stay engaged, and you can track engagement, you can track donations to the school, things like that. It's a really powerful platform, and it's all about your development of the platform itself, which demonstrates that this is not just a business or sales platform anymore. It's a really powerful engine for education when you set it up right. I think a lot of things that I tend to lean towards is I'm trying to get that message out that you have to set things up correctly. And I'll go over this throughout the entire episode. It's really important to have your own admin and your own developer while you're setting these systems up. You can't just rely on a Salesforce partner to set up your entire instance alone and then just leave you with the platform, because of the fact that you need someone who can help guide the university or the school's vision forward. Not everything will happen at that same moment. You may have a lot of ideas of where you want the platform to be or how much you want built out by a certain time, but that's not going to happen without a single person that is working within the university guiding that project and guiding that vision and guiding the system being built. Now, enough about that. Let's jump straight into talking about Salesforce Editions. Our standard Salesforce Edition is just the Salesforce CRM platform itself, and it comes in different segments like, I believe, Pro, Enterprise, Unlimited, and basically what all these are just for higher level expansion. So they allow for more like API integrations into other systems, which are just kind of like backdoors where the systems talk to each other and feed information to each other. And this is the edition that is mainly used by enterprise businesses or smaller businesses. The editions and kits we're going to mainly focus on today are going to be both our nonprofit and our education cloud. So Salesforce has a nonprofit success pack, and that just entails the nonprofit cloud that Salesforce offers. Salesforce Nonprofit is often used by private schools, sometimes universities, who have strong advancement and development programs. So what that means for you, if you don't work in the university space, is alumni programs. So like alumni programs that accept a lot of donations from alumni. You're going to want to run that nonprofit cloud for things like fundraising, donor tracking, and managing these campaigns you have for alumni. Then there's Salesforce Education Cloud. So Salesforce Education Cloud is focused mainly on the full student life cycle. So things like admissions, enrollment, advising, so like counseling can go in there as well. Student engagement, and even family engagement. And so Education Cloud, I wouldn't really say it has two editions. It has two segments to it, because Education Cloud can also be used for universities. But for K-12 specifically, there's the K-12 architecture kit, which is just a pre-built data model specifically just for K-12 schools and districts. So like private schools use this one as well. And with this, your main focus is mainly going to be tracking students, contacts, which are parents and guardians, enrollments, attendance programs. Now, if we just dive back a bit, let's talk about the Salesforce Nonprofit and nonprofit managed packages that they offer on Salesforce. So this is just their nonprofit data model for fundraising and program management. So I already explained, like if you're an advancement office at a university, you're going to more than likely want to use the nonprofit edition to manage your campaigns for your alumni and also accept donations, track donations. You can even build it out specifically for your events that you manage at the university itself to track things like alumni attendance at events. And you're also, so like when we talk about Salesforce Editions, there are other add-ons that we want to also couple these editions with. So just because you're using Nonprofit Cloud doesn't mean you're not going to need other Salesforce clouds. So like if you're choosing to use Nonprofit Cloud specifically because you're a university and you're using it for something like alumni engagement and alumni donations, events, things like that, you're also going to want to couple that with Marketing Cloud as well, so that you have like a well-rounded, scalable experience, especially in terms of marketing. And it also fully integrates with Data Cloud. And something that's also really special about Nonprofit Cloud is I haven't really looked into what the criteria for this is, but I know of a private school that managed to get themselves Nonprofit Cloud, and this was way before Education Cloud came out. They didn't find out about Education Cloud until I had spoken with them about which Salesforce edition we were using. But before Education Cloud was a thing, this private school set up Nonprofit Cloud for themselves, and they did it by using one of Salesforce's programs, which allows you to obtain 10 free nonprofit licenses licenses for Nonprofit Cloud. And so maybe what I'll do is I'll write a blog post on what the qualifiers are for those 10 licenses for Nonprofit Cloud, because this is also something that if you're working university, you're working a private school, and you're thinking of setting up Nonprofit Salesforce Cloud for your institution, those 10 free licenses can make all the difference in terms of school-wide adoption, because typically something that stops a project in its tracks is the adoption of a new platform. And so being able to obtain 10 free licenses and kind of play around with the platform, and even if you have a Salesforce admin already working in your institution, it gives you the chance to kind of like build a little bit of the platform. That way you can show stakeholders the value of Salesforce Nonprofit. It's kind of a really great way to get stakeholder buy-in and demonstrate that there's a plan in place. Now let's switch over to Education Cloud and talk about that edition a little bit. And then we're going to get into typically what situations, depending on your type of school and what you're trying to use it for, what edition would be best for your fit. So now Education Cloud has a ton of different things already pre-built into it, right? So you are already set up for recruitment and admissions. You have the student success part of the platform, which is kind of like a data cloud for education, which provides student insights for students who are enrolled at your school. So this could be a range of tons of different things like student attendance, student behavior reports, counseling. If you provide therapy, you can build custom objects for therapy, writing, and therapy reports within the system, tracking student grades, and bringing it back to admissions and recruitment. You can build your custom communities to showcase to prospective parents what the school is like, and even grant them access to school applications, and after that, school registration. And then even for students who are returning, you can build out those custom student re-registrations within the platform as well. And then also Education Cloud allows for advancement and alumni relations as well. And now with hearing that, you're probably like, thinking, what is the difference between nonprofit as well as Education Clouds in terms of those alumni relations? And so we'll get into that a little bit later, or in like a minute or two. Now, something really neat with Education Cloud, because it can be used for universities as well, is that I mentioned something earlier, which is their learning creation wizard, which allows universities to define course and program details for a learner throughout their life cycle, alongside the prerequisites or core classes and stuff that a student needs to take within a university. Now, in terms of the K-12 architecture kit within Education Cloud, there are some other things that are just mainly streamlined for the creation for data sets just for K-12 rather than universities, because if you solely go with Education Cloud, you're going to have all of that extra stuff available to you. Whereas K-12, the architecture kit really streamlines that kind of like data modeling process for K-12 schools. And then something really neat in here is you can also integrate a staff section of the platform where you can do both recruit staff as well as retain staff and hold things like their education, their continued education, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I've talked a lot about these editions, both education and nonprofit. So now, what are the differences? Because there seems to be a lot of similarities. And Chris, you just said that a private school used nonprofit, but your school uses the K-12 architecture kit within Education Cloud. So what are really the key differences here? So let's just go through scenarios. You work at a public, private, maybe a charter school or district. It's straight K-12. You're going to want to use the K-12 architecture kit alongside Education Cloud. That's really going to streamline the data models for you. Now, you're a charter school, but it's a whole entire charter network, and we're thinking higher level now. We're thinking you're not just the admin or tech within the school itself. So I guess this would also work for district as well, in terms of, because we're talking about charter school network, which would work much like a district as well, because you have that overhead, I want to say company. I mean, schools are a business, so like a charter school network, there would be some overhead kind of company or admin that doles things out for the rest of their schools. So if you're a network or you are the top district, you're going to want to also use the K-12 kit or just straight Education Cloud. This is going to depend on your needs here. And the reason why I'm saying Education Cloud is because you may need that room to grow your advancement or your alumni network if fundraising is a big part of the school. So, I mean, really, I'm leaning towards the charter school network here rather than the overhead school district. But again, use cases vary. Now, at a college and university level, for a college's base needs in terms of just the overall student admission, student tracking life cycle, and all that other good stuff, you can either do education cloud or nonprofit cloud. So in terms of talking about universities and nonprofit cloud, because I had sprinkled this earlier, if you're a university and you use nonprofit cloud, it's more than likely just your advancement team that's going to be using nonprofit cloud. But if you want to do the smart thing and because I've spoken to people at the university level, and if your advancement team is going to be the one testing out Salesforce for the university and testing it out in terms of tracking alumni engagement and donations, events, etc., you might as well go the entire education cloud route if you intend on rolling it out for the entirety of campus and kind of moving everything into that Salesforce experience for all users. Now, if you're a private school and you work K through 12, if you're a private school and you work K through 12 in the private school, you're going to want that K through 12 architecture kit in Education Cloud. If you're a private high school, you're going to want to solely go Education Cloud. But if you're a private school with a advancement or development office and you rely on those alumni donations, you're gonna want to go nonprofit cloud. And you see like the use cases here really do vary. And also really just talk about things to watch out for, because there's a lot to watch out for here. Our first is going to be overbuying or choosing the wrong edition for your institution, your school. Now this can obviously be a headache, right? So the school I know that had chosen nonprofit, their admin had really expressed to me that they were struggling in terms of like user adoption and use cases because, of course, obviously they're a private school, K through 12. They're not focused on alumni engagement or alumni donations. All of their funding comes from the state itself. They're really just focused on tracking student metrics and building that out, right? So like kind of like my school where we're doing things like student therapy notes and tracking student attendance and things like that. So now they have to deal with kind of trying to convert over to Education Cloud and having that data that they've already established and set up switched over. And this also goes back to what I said earlier. If you're a university and, I don't think it would be right to have your advancement team try out Salesforce Nonprofit and you're thinking about rolling it out across the entire university later on. If it's a success, I think you go all in if you can and just do Education Cloud, because I did mention, you can do alumni stuff in both nonprofit as well as your Education Cloud. These are just like small headaches that you kind of want to avoid in terms of the additions, because nonprofit's not really built for everything education. Now, the next thing you want to look out for is misunderstanding customization needs or assuming that just because something's out of the box, it means that it's done. Now, this goes back to what I said earlier, when you first think about implementing Salesforce, no matter the edition, you're going to meet with a Salesforce rep and they're going to advise one of their partners set up your Salesforce account, because these things do actually require someone that's gone through this process. Setting up a Salesforce instance is not easy, and although it's quite expensive, it's easy to hire one of these companies that can set up a Salesforce instance for you or set up your entire data model, data sets for you and upload your data for you, because it helps to speed up your institution actually getting into the Salesforce instance and working within it. And the point of everything I'm saying is going back to that you do need your own in-house Salesforce admin, developer, architect, etc., because you need someone who speaks the language and someone who's going to help guide the vision forward alongside this outside team that you're hiring to set up your Salesforce instance. And even post this team leaving after your Salesforce instance is quote unquote complete, you're going to need this admin, developer, architect to continue building out your Salesforce platform based on whatever your visions for the future are, based on whatever your needs grow to be. And now I also want to take a minute, because I've spoken to people before who were also really focused inside of the education space on AI and utilizing AI within their systems, because Salesforce is really pushing AI and Agentforce for everyone, for universities, for regular businesses, for enterprise businesses. But I believe I was reading something the other day, or listening to something where they were saying the statistic for institutions or businesses that actually need AI or Agentforce is somewhere around 7%. And like, this is not like a con. There's no shade to Salesforce or anything, because, you know, they have a new product and they want everyone to utilize it. But sometimes the issue is that we create something new and something fancy and we push it out, and there's no real use case in certain scenarios for something right now. So for most institutions, you know, you're just getting set up within the Salesforce platform itself. You don't need to also focus on the use cases of AI. What you really need to focus on is getting your data up into the platform and getting staff trained. And anyone that works at a university, anyone that works at a school, you know that this takes forever to get done. So focusing on things like AI are kind of useless in the beginning. And that's kind of like a 2-3 year out plan. Like, how can we integrate the use of Agentforce to summarize data or get these specific things that we need from the platform and summarize it for us? And even with that being said, what's really truly needed, especially in the education space, and people don't talk about this, is a integration expert or someone who knows about Salesforce integrations. Because, you know, as of right now, a big focus at my school is how do we get Salesforce and Office to speak to each other in multiple different types of ways, right? Not just sending and reading emails and logging them for student portfolios, but also showing important documents that are housed in OneDrive, also in Salesforce, like student progress reports, so that you can just click it and it brings it up. You can read it there, or you can even go into OneDrive itself to edit or read more, things like that. Because when you're also, and I guess this is just a long sanctimonious like part of things to watch out for. When you're first going into Salesforce, you really need, and again, this goes to your single person that you're hiring to guide your vision, you really need to think about the future and the expansion of your platform and what else you're going to need to integrate, what else you're going to need to pull in. And you kind of have to see into the future a little bit, because you have to think about expansion. There's a lot to think about here. So you have to think about things like that, where it's like, how are we going to then destroy our data silos and integrate things into Salesforce properly? Because what you really want is people, and this is the point of Salesforce or using Salesforce in an educational setting, is you want people working in as little platforms as possible. So if you can have like 70 to 90% of your institution school working just in Salesforce, and the other ones have to use 1 or 2 platforms together to get the job done, you've really had success here, right? You really want to minimize most of your workforce into a single platform so that they can get all their information, do all their work inside of that single platform. Now, I think I've like kind of kept you guys too long here. You can stay tuned to a blog post I'll write up about the free nonprofit licenses and what the requirements for those are. If you're really interested in learning more about Salesforce, the best place to start is on their Trailheads, which is Salesforce's free learning tool. And you can also always go to Salesforce's website and check out the different editions and what everything is packaged with. If you've made it this far, I really want to thank you for listening. I hope you're enjoying the podcast. I'm going to be dropping some forms in the podcast note description, as well as on my Substack. Please don't forget to, if you're just listening to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening, if you haven't been to my Substack yet, please subscribe to my Substack. That is where I drop most of my blog posts, and I'll be dropping forms on there as well so that you can engage with me, you can ask questions, and hopefully as we start to build up some questions, we can go over questions in episodes or set aside episodes to answer some questions. Thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned for the next episode.